hers not as obvious as what's going on, so. She also has some arthritis in her back end. Her problem is more in her hips. That's why she probably is, I see more changes there. She also has some constipation, so I don't know if you're seeing more difficulties her trying to squat to go to the bathroom. The one thing is that her intestines are sort of like in a wad, and that's abnormal. You don't tend to see them like that. If we went back to looking at Honey's, they tend to be more like back and forth, but hers is in this like bunch. And then her kidneys, she's getting a little bit of a change too, because I can see a little bit, so she might have a little calcification and change going on there. And then here's her stomach, and then this is their pylorus, and that is supposed to be right at the end, but hers is larger than it's supposed to be, and her liver looks especially small. So when I try to increase this and bring it up and go down here again, that's bigger than it typically should be. Her spleen's right here, and that doesn't look too small, too bad. It looks okay there. But again, I can barely see the liver, so she's got a really small liver, so she could be having some liver issues going on. Okay. And again, when I get back here into the intestine, it's just a wad. Normally, when the colon comes, it should come and it should move through, and it's just not a normal pattern. Now, to confirm that, it'd be nice to get the other x-rays. She didn't want to be on her back whatsoever. And again, it's because she's got some arthritis in these hips, so I think she's uncomfortable. But again, her spine looks so much better. And then when I look at these kidneys, they're a little bit more elongated, and I see a little change there, pretty subtle. But I do think that there's some changes. It's not a typical view that I should have with the intestines being more bunched. Her pylorus looks a little bit big. And then she's our cougher, so what she's got going on is, here's her trachea, it's narrow, and then you see it widen right there, so that's a little unusual. That's not the typical pattern. And then her heart size looks fine. And when we look at her lungs, they're not actually, I was thinking when I was first looking, why don't we just try her on Robitussin and see if that helps her. But when we get here again, she's got arthritis in her shoulders. She's got, this is fused together, that part of her. But see how narrow that is, and then it widens? Yeah. So that's usually that there's some kind of pressure that's being put on the trachea. And again, just that change from a narrow to a wide could be causing, the coughing that you're seeing. But I don't see, remember how we saw on Honey, we saw more of those pin pot spots? That again goes more with cancer. I'm not seeing it. I just see that she's like a little bit more solid through here, but again, she does have and it could be a lymph node right there, so she does have a little bit of an enlargement there. Okay. And I see the same thing on her. They've done a second film on her. So what I would recommend, one, to digest all this, I would recommend that on Honey today we do a fine needle aspirate and take a sample from that, send it out to a pathologist. They're going to help to tell us, because if it's a really aggressive cancer and we see any kind of questionable cancer in her abdomen, and I think it is in her chest, then honestly to do surgery is pointless. It doesn't mean let's go and take the spleen out, because even if I take the spleen out, it's most likely a mammary cancer or something else, and it's gone somewhere else, and you would be euthanizing on the table. That's what I'd be recommending. So I think take the aspirate and let's see what the results on that are. Everything else stays the same. When I look at trouble, I think let's just set her up for an abdominal ultrasound. And if you wanted to see what is going on. And then in the meantime, I would probably just pick up some plain Robitussin and try her on plain Robitussin, a tablespoon, maybe you could do it 3 times a day. And see if just plain Robitussin makes her more comfortable. Because it could just be that you can see if that gives her some relief. Okay. And what we would do is ideally set them both up for abdominal ultrasounds. I think there's definitely benefit in waiting till the blood work's here. And I definitely think sending that blood work out rather than doing it in the clinic will be beneficial to us, because we'll get more information. And again, I'd probably wait till we get the blood work, and I do the aspirin on her today. Okay. Okay.
That way we can have the aspirin for next week.
He might come. It should come in by. Usually on aspirins it's 3 to 5 days. Okay. Running into the weekend, sometimes it'll take a little bit longer. But I have sent them in, and I've had them on Monday or Tuesday as a result. So why don't we grab a needle? We'll do an aspirate.
You want a large needle or
just the regular pink top will be fine. So the biggest thing is, if I'm worried more about one than the other, it's definitely Honey, even though she looks less aged compared to Trouble. and on trouble, I just don't know why it's wadded in her intestines. I'd be watching closely when she's defecating, is she straining? Again, it could just be some arthritis that she's not going, and that's where it's all wadded, but that's not a typical pattern. And when I did look back to her previous x-rays, it didn't look like that. So both of them have changes on their x-ray compared to when we last did an x-ray on them.
It's not you trouble, don't worry.
And it does seem like whenever you get this news, your husband's out of town.
Yeah.
It's like I remember the last